Hey guys, Tom Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the film documentary Detroit. So, as you can see below on the right, this movie came out way earlier this month, August 4th to be exact, but I only saw it fairly recently. So, as you can see, I'm falling further and further and behind on reviews if you've been keeping up with my channel, but that's totally fine. So, this movie or the documentary takes place before World War One, I believe, in 1967. I believe that was the date they gave at the end of the movie. So I guess spoilers right off the bat. Anyways, it starts with these colored images. I guess they were hand drawn. And then we cut to this like live action thing where these cops are uh, moving into this building, and these guys are trying to end the party while the cops are barging in, and one of the people inside is also a cop who manages to try to make everything work out a-okay, but the cops are actually just waiting for them outside. So the black cop that I mentioned works with the cops, and he's trying to make soothe everything over, and some of the people end up being arrested, and that causes the crowd to resist, and they start to break stuff. And it was already at this point where I was thinking, oh boy, did this movie come out at a very delicate time. This movie really does show that history has a ugly way of repeating itself, because I can think of things that have happened fairly recently within the past few years, let alone something that happened way back in 1967. So it is scary to think that we've had riots and we had cops trying to detain the situation, and it's so bizarre that we as people from around the area have still not have learned how to deal with this in a more civil manner, unfortunately. So this movie review is all about to get political. I'm sure my this review will not be monetized, because if I bother monetizing it, it's not gonna. I mean, even when I do monetize my videos, it doesn't make a difference because I don't get paid when I do monetize my videos, so that doesn't matter anyways. But I'll test it out just to see what happens. Anyways, getting back to the movie, we see that during the riots, this guy named John is elected to talk to the town, trying to calm them down. But that only makes matters worse, and then the crowd end up attacking these like firemen who trying to just do their job, and then they're like thrown out. You see, as the days of the riot progress, more and more precautions are taken. The military is brought in. The cops are roaming the towns. We see the military shoot this girl who is mistaken for a sniper. I don't know if that was added for like an extra drama or if that actually really happened at any point in time. But by the way this movie is presented, everything feels very realistic. So yeah, it's one of the movie's best qualities is that it feels very real. Uh, you know, whether or not some stuff is dramatized, it's very hard to say based on what I've seen, anyways. So, anyways, we see this one cop say that they're failing the people, and we see this man then try to rob the store. Uh, and then he was like shot at twice, and then the cops say that they're overwhelmed, or the cops are overwhelmed because there's so much going on. This cop who clipped this guy ends up being this like main cop, I guess I'll call him. I don't remember his name, but we'll end up following his little story throughout the movie. Anyways, we get this little transition into these female singers, and we see this guy in red named Larry, who's a singer with these other singers, and they're getting ready to perform essentially, and they do a little practice run. But then we see one of the coppers talk to one of the guys, and then the building has to be exited. And we see that without much dialogue, that Larry is very determined to sing regardless if the building is empty. Probably one of the most like centered moments of the movie, of like nothing crazy going on, just this guy doing his little performance to essentially no one at this point. So, anyways, after that little moment of solace, they end up wanting to leave, and then the bus they are in is and ends up being attacked by other individuals who are also angry. So the cop who had shot the guy is now being questioned, and he's looking uh, like things are not looking good on his end. But while that's going on, more places are being robbed, things are on fire. So the band that I was referring to makes it to this store, and we see this moment. I don't remember who it was, but I believe someone got injured at some point. I don't know if it was Larry or not, but we see this young cop event. I think no, it was a black cop who ends up saving this younger man. I wrote that a bit later, but so, anyways, the military guys are grouping up, and then we see the black cop trying to put them at ease. So, meanwhile, Larry and the other guys, the other singers who are with these ladies, end up in this little hotel, and this guy that has the hat, I believe his name is Fred. He's there too with them, and the women that are with them, because they were talking to some woman at some point. I forgot where it happened, but anyways, Larry like sings to one of them, and then they're led into this little I guess I called it a pad, but I guess it's more of like a motel like area. So Larry's like making out with this woman, and then the guy in the hat, I don't know if that was Fred or not, I just call him the guy in the hat, ends up demonstrating uh, the uh, the old school way of white power, as he refers to it. I believe they actually said that in the movie. It was like, this is what it's like to have white power. Um, so he pulls out a gun, and he's like aiming it at some other guy who's with them in the building. Uh, so he shoots like this fake bullets at his friend, and then the others freak out because like he pretends to be dead for a while, and then um, the ladies end up wanting to leave with Larry and the other guy in the red. And while that's going on, the military's like freaking out because they heard gunfire, so they're assuming that there was a sniper. And this takes up the rest of the movie, is just this whole situation of them trying to figure out who the sniper was, essentially. So, anyways, the main white cop that we are following, the one that was being interrogated earlier, ends up in the building with some of the other cops in the military surrounding the area. Uh, the hat guy ends up getting shot because he like tries to flee the situation. He ends up getting shot down, and the main cop guy, seeing that he was getting scolded earlier, decides to plant a knife near the guy to use his influence to try to shake the situation into being that he was attacked first, so he can, essentially say that that's what happened. Um, so the main cop and the other cops have the singers against the wall, along with the two women that are with them. So I believe there was four guys. I believe four of the four singers, and there was one other guy with them, and then the two ladies. So I think there's five, six, seven people in total. I think it was. So, anyways, the cops are trying to figure out who had the knife. They're doing all this yelling. They're searching the building. I think they found the other guy with one of the women, and then one of the cop ends up hitting him with the butt of his gun. Um, so, anyways, they end up on the wall, and they end up trying to search the area. And while that's going on, they're getting interrogated. And like I mentioned, this scene goes on for a really long time, and it keeps up with the tension and the drama and all the other like I was actually really surprised how long this was, like how much of the chunk of the movie this is taking up. But it was really exhilarating as they're taking some of the individuals into like separate rooms at some point, and then like using fake bullets to essentially scare them into not saying anything. Um, so there's like getting separated, getting put back together, but in making sure that like the people who were supposedly shot stay out of like the area. And they were doing it nice and slow, trying to get the information, but none of them were talking. Um, so the main cop is getting angrier and angrier, and they essentially at some point one of the cops, because they do it by separate cops. One of the cops, and there are three cops, I believe, there, and then the rest are military-based guys. So the last cop that gets one of the guys in there ends up actually really shooting him, like with an actual gun instead of a fake gun. So now they have a situation where uh, one of the guys is dead, and he comes out and he admits that, and then the main cop is like freaking out now because they weren't supposed to do that. They were supposed to just try to make them freak out, and the situation is only getting worse. So now they're trying to figure out a way how they can get out of the situation. So, you know, they like they're like conversing, and then they're trying to figure it out. Um, and essentially, it ends up where like the main cop is like, we should probably start like making the people making some of the guys leave and making sure that they won't say anything. So that's what he starts doing. He does it for like the first two, and then they just run out. And I believe the last guy, the guy in the red, I believe it was the one who's like, there's a dead body there. I know it, I see it. And then I think the main cop ended up shooting him too. So we end up with that going down. And after Larry escapes, I believe he might have been the first one out, and we see him meet up with this good cop. I just in my notes I just called him a good cop because he was like, "Hey, are you alright?" He was checking up on him, trying to do his job as best as possible. He wasn't a part of the whole sniper group. The group that checked out who was the sniper or potential sniper, I should say, and he was just trying to like help him out. So I think that was probably for me one of the most important parts of this movie was to see that one good cop in the situation. I think even if that was fake or real or regardless, I think that was definitely something that needed to be in this movie after so much nonsense, and that one other good moment, just to have that one other good moment of like, hey, there's a good cop in a situation of craziness on both sides, essentially. Anyways, so after Larry gets put into like the hospital, the other singers eventually, who are left, come to meet him. So while that's going on, we see the steel. This I think it was somebody else, but the cops come to take this guy's working on the steel. I don't know who that was, but maybe I'm just misremembering. But he was one of the guys that was there, and I guess some time had passed between this point and that point. But anyways, the cops take him in and they question him and they put him in this lineup and it ends up being arrested. So we cut to the singer who's at the hospital now, that being Larry. So the cop killer is getting conversed with the main cop, and he's trying to make sure he has an alibi, trying to make sure that he knows what to say. But then the main cop ends up in the situation where he ends up in the room where the other two essentially told the lawyer or the questioner guys, I forget what they're called, I'm sorry, but they end up like questioning him, and then like his lawyer comes right at the last minute. So we cut to Larry finally getting out of the hospital with the other singers. They end up in the studio finally, and Larry's just straight out done with all this and wanting to like sing for this type of situation after what happened to the hat guy, or I believe it was Fred, who they shot essentially first. So two of the three cops were eventually arrested, apparently, and then the one with the lawyer, the main cop, ended up getting off essentially scot free. So Larry gets this letter from the government, and I don't remember. I think that was to signify that it was like for the trial that was getting set up. So, anyways, we cut to the trial, and we have the solo trial where someone mentions like how it was a toy gun, and how essentially the cops were doing what they were doing, and some of the questioning seemed like it was like geared toward making it like they were the bad guys in the situation. At least that's how one of them explored it. I believe it was the last one that was questioned, and he started saying, "Hey, we're not the ones on trial." Essentially, after whatever questions were asked, I didn't write those down, but essentially that's what happened. So, uh, on the assault and on the murder, the cops are found not guilty, and everyone's all upset. And there's a few like last little moment dialogues, and the singers get their gig eventually. And then Larry, during the winter time, goes to this church, and this last little moment of brevity after all this nonsense applies to be this church choir, essentially like being a part of this church choir, and he ends up being like the main one, like the main singer of that group of the church. So apparently that Larry fellow is still in Detroit after all this time. Oh, that's what the little after word said of the at the end of the movie. So, oh boy. Uh as I mentioned, Detroit in the 1967s is very reminiscent of events that have been happening fairly recently, and I think this movie is a movie that was definitely a documentary worth telling to show how history has indeed repeated itself, and it, back when all that nonsense was happening, now it feels like the shoe is on the other foot. We've had the Black Lives Matter movement again being, chaotic, and then we have all this neo-Nazi stuff and uh, frantic, like extremist alt-right things in the news, and I don't know what's going on. Things are calm where I live, but other areas are not so lucky, and they had to go through this ordeal. And I would say a certain few people I would definitely say would be deserving of being needing to watch this movie. Maybe one named Trump. But being political jokes aside, yeah, this movie was intense, and it was scary how much hasn't changed, and that's what makes this movie so strong. I think is not just the acting, because it feels like as I said, it doesn't feel like there's ever a moment where it's like this is pushed up to make the dramatization a little more impactful. It never really felt like that. It felt like they were always constantly in the moment of being realistic, if that makes any sense. I really enjoyed this documentary. I would highly recommend it if you've not checked it out yet. I give this documentary a 9.5. Yes, a 9.5 out of 10. Almost a perfect 10 out of 10. Definitely highly recommend this movie. If you've not seen it, definitely check it out. Uh, and with that, we'll see how fast this video gets demonetized. So, if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, everyone, bye!